like to call to order a public hearing, and this hearing is on an ordinance of the Township of Susquehanna. Township of Susquehanna, Dauphin County, Pennsylvania, amending the zoning ordinance to amend the permitted residential uses in the TND district. Two, to amend the percentages that apply to the land area for the TND 1 district. And three, amend Exhibit C, the Part 19 of the zoning ordinance regulating plan, TND Traditional Neighborhood Development 1 district. Solicitor, has this been duly advertised?
Yes, Mr. President. I'd like to move a copy of the notice to advertise public hearing into the record as Exhibit A.
Thank you.
It is approximately 6:40 p.m. and we're located at Susquehanna Township's administrative offices. A copy of the notice has been moved into the record. I would invite Township staff to make any comments at this time if it wishes.
Do you want to? Go ahead.
Minutes, please.
I'll try to be even briefer than that.
We'll save that for the audit report.
This is a public hearing to amend the zoning ordinance for the property, Susquehanna Union Green property. It will increase the residential use from 40% to 50%. It will also allow for just some general changes to the residential requirements, and then the regulating plan is updated along with that. It has been reviewed by the Planning Commission and the DRC and recommended for approval. Any questions for me?
I know we discussed this at our last meeting briefly, but this is the hearing where we will take public comment on the proposal, the proposed ordinance amendment. Does the applicant have anything they wish to share with us? Vartan.
Good evening, Ralph Vartan, CEO of the Vartan Group. I don't have any need to make an additional presentation, but wanted to note that we're here and available to answer any questions that you may have. In addition to me, my colleague Kat Welsbach is here. She's the Vice President for Development and Construction, and also our outside legal consultant, Dave Schutte from Pepper Hamilton, is here. So we're available if you'd like to ask any questions or discuss anything.
Thank you.
Do members of the public have any questions about the proposal or of the applicant? About members of the board?
Yes, Mr. President, to confirm, this is a strict text amendment. It's not broadly applicable. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's amending the TND1 district, which the subject parcel is the only parcel in the township that is zoned TND1 at this point. So it would only be applicable to this specific parcel, yes.
Thank you.
Any members of the public before we close? Okay. Having taken all testimony, we'll now conclude the public hearing, and I'll turn it over to you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. The hearing is closed. I'd like to call to order at this point, the monthly meeting of the Susquehanna Township, regular board meeting of the Susquehanna Township Board of Commissioners. I would note that the board did meet in executive session to discuss matters of personnel and real estate. As for attendance, all commissioners are present with the exception of Commissioner Johnson, who is excused. I'd like to do a Pledge of Allegiance followed by a moment of silence. And for the moment of silence, I'd like to especially keep in my thoughts our former solicitor, Bruce Foreman, who passed away last week. Bruce was a good guy, and as I was saying to some others, when he got here about 15 years ago, the length of items to do for lawyers, pages and pages and pages long. It followed a rough period in township history, and within a year or two, Bruce had that down to like 2 pages, and they were meaty. I mean, he was so diligent. He was also, somebody who had a good sense about him, good sense of knowledge of how things actually work and can get done. And he was a friend. And so he decided to retire about 4 years ago, and We ended up with, we're a competitive process with our current team, Tara and Mike. But I did want to note his passing in our moment of silence. And so would ask all of us to recite the Pledge of Allegiance as led by Commissioner Pine, followed by a moment of silence. Okay, welcome everybody. I will start off with petitions, complaints, suggestions from citizens. Does anybody wish to address the board tonight? Okay, hearing none. We'll move on to approval of minutes. August 12th and August 26th meeting of the regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners and the workshop meeting. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next up is recognitions and presentations. This is the 2020 audit of financial statements. Kim Stank is here from Zellenhofsky and Axelrod to present a brief summary of how we did in the year 2020.
Hello, Kim Stank, Tim Mara. We're from Zellenhofsky Axelrod. We have very brief, I know we're charged for 3 minutes.
You can go to 4.
Oh, okay. You have a couple things in front of you. You have the brief presentation that we're going to present to you. You have a letter, it's from us to you, talking about our responsibilities as well as your responsibilities. We're responsible for the audit. You overall are responsible for the financial statements. We would like to thank Dave, Jill, they've done a great job. And the other thing that you have in front of you is the actual financial statements. One thing that you do not have is the single audit report. That will be separate, and we're just waiting on a number to put into it. So that didn't get finalized today, but it will be finalized very shortly as soon as we get that number as well. So do you want to go into our little presentation?
Sure. So the audit was performed in accordance with auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America, government auditing standards, and uniform guidance. The government auditing standards and uniform guidance is new this year with the addition of the single audit, as the township incurred more than $750,000 worth of federal expenditures with the CARES Act funding. We expressed unmodified opinions on the financial statements. And there were no management letter comments. As Kim mentioned, Dave and Jill's team does a great job with the financial statements and the controls for the township. This is our 3rd year for the audit, and over our course of being your auditors, it's been a smooth process.
So when we say it's an unmodified opinion, that is a great thing. So in layman's terms, a clean opinion. So across the board from the financial statement opinion as well as the single audit opinions.
Yep. And just some bullet points and other required communications on the next page of the handout. Just kind of summarizes some of the main points in the governance letter that Kim mentioned earlier. No difficulties encountered in the audit, no disagreements with management. We have obtained management representations, no management consultations with other accountants to our knowledge, and no other audit issues, just high level. And then some of the financial results, real high level, starting with the governmental activities, which you'll see on the statement of net position in your financial statements. The township ended with a deficit fund, a net position of $114,000, which is an increase of $4.1 million in 2020 since 2019. Your net position was comprised of net investment in capital assets of $15.2 million, restricted net position of 2.1, and unrestricted of a deficit 17.3. Your total assets and deferred outflows totaled 69.4, which is up from 68.4 in 2019. And total liabilities and deferred inflows came in at $69.5 million, The main drivers for the decrease of your deficit or increase of the performance during the year was the township increased your millage rate, so therefore you saw an increase in the real estate taxes as well as the CARES Act funding that we mentioned earlier. When we talk about your liabilities, the two main drivers for that amount being so high is your pension and your OPEB coming in at $8.2 and $13 million.
Not something that we've talked about in the past. You have a complete liability on there for the future, and it kind of drives the position of the township down. So unfortunately, it was something that GASB decided to put onto your financial statement. So you have a big picture. The good news is you still have your governmental funds, financial statements, and they show a better picture of a current 1-year status. So we'll go into that a little bit.
Yeah, so on that next page of the slide, as Kim mentioned, your governmental funds ended the year with a $38.2 million positive fund balance, which is an increase of $1.9 million from the prior year. Your general fund ended the year with a fund balance of $35.8, which is a $1 million increase from 2019. Your fund balance is comprised of non-spendable of 29.1, restricted of 2.4, and unassigned of 6.7. The $6.7 million unassigned fund balance increased by 2.6 from the prior year, which is a good sign. And the township ended the year with governmental funds total assets of $42.4 million and total liabilities of $4.2 million. So, real high level, but with the CARES Act funding as well as increasing the millage rate in the township, certainly saw a positive step forward with the decrease of the net deficit, and is sitting in a good position.
And again, we thank Jill and Dave for all that they have done. So, do you guys have any questions? We tried to keep it brief and very high level.
Excellent. Thank you.
Do I have any questions?
The pension deficit.
Yep.
That did decrease this past year as well.
Right, the
I'm
pension
trying to
liability
remember
did,
all the
it did
numbers.
decrease. And we saw that across the board, and that is really as a result of the economy.
Oh, okay.
And it will go up and down as the economy increases and, is better and worse.
Investment return specifically. Right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
yes.
Yep, actuarially driven, yep.
Any other questions?
I just want to say it's good to see you not in a
Not on Zoom?
Yeah.
That's nice to see all of you.
Likewise, yes.
Hopefully next year we can see your smiles. So, at any time, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to Tim or I. We are always available. So, and we look forward to continuing working with you on your ARP funds. So,
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
yeah,
much.
thank you.
All right, into reports committees, buildings and grounds, Commissioner Rothrock.
Thank you, Mr. President. We did receive 3 bids for our administration building renovations. They were reviewed, and the bids included 2 alternates, one to replace the current generator, and a second to upgrade the automatic door locks. ECI was the low bidder, and Ono has determined that they are qualified, that their bid is complete and consistent with the bidding documents. With the alternates, including integrated illuminations technology upgrades, which are all the screens, audio, video equipment for this room, conference room behind us, and public conference room, and also furnishing. Total cost is $1,185,520, and that's as compared to the original cost estimate of $1,025,316. The proposed source of funds for the project include the balance of the 2021 general obligation debt proceeds, which was planned for that, the Comcast Capital Grant, American Rescue Plan funds, and $115,000 from the general fund. So I'm not sure Mr. Kratzer has anything to add to that, expand on that.
I don't, Commissioner. to the extent that anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to address those, particularly as it relates to the proposed source of funds if you were to proceed with the project. Again, this is something that we put together. There are eligible expenses, and there may be additional eligible expenses that are directly qualified expenses for use of the American Rescue Plan funds. So as you see in the proposed source of funds, the HVAC expenses are a directly eligible expense. Some of the additional barrier walls that we're also proposing to install may also be eligible direct expenses as well. So if that was to occur and we were able to identify additional costs that are directly eligible expenses, that would reduce the amount that's being shown either out of the general fund or out of the revenue loss calculation funds associated with the American Rescue Plan Act. So we're not expecting any action by the board this evening. You have a 30-day period to accept the bids if you choose to do so. So wanted to provide this information to you and to the public, and then have this on your agenda on the 23rd of September for your consideration.
I'll ask a quick and general question, perhaps both to you, David, as well as perhaps Bob. It seems to me that the period we're in, or perhaps the period that just has come to a close, the cost of construction was soaring for a period, both residential and commercial, from my understanding, having to do with supplies or what have you. Are you seeing that in these bids, or you think it's calmed down? Do you have a sense of that?
I don't know if you want to comment on that.
The three bids that were received were very close for this type of renovation work. So I think that, I think the township did receive a very good set of bids. Unfortunately, there weren't more bidders, but they were very close. You know, the grand totals, ECI was $1,300,000 and the high bid was $1,195,000. So in the overall course of things, considering where we are today in the economy and the uncertainties of pricing and materials, I think we have a very good value in the project.
Okay, thank you.
On that point, is this a situation where we are required to take the lowest responsible and responsive?
Under the
Or do we
public,
have-
under the public works contracting process, unless there is a significant error in the bid, unless there is some real issues with the contractor, yes,
Okay.
we are. I can tell you, and to follow up on Tono's recommendation, we have dealt with ECI before, and they are a very reputable firm.
Okay. Thank you very much, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, their portfolio of public projects, in particular, school district projects, municipal projects, is extensive. And I believe they also have past experience working directly with the township. They may have been the contractor.
Public safety building as
Pub-
well as theirs.
The public safety building and for Edgemont, yes.
So just in terms of, again, additional feedback on that issue, Tono reported that, as there always is, there's, requests for clarification, those kinds of things. And ECI submitted the majority of those. They were extremely thorough in their review of the documents and posed questions. So in addition to their portfolio of work, Kyle was also personally impressed just in terms of the level of attention that they were paying to the bidding documents to make sure that they had it right. So,
Outstanding. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Any other questions?
I would like to see a little bit more information on the furnishings.
Okay, yep, I'd be happy to.
This is why my wife doesn't like to go furniture shopping. But one, just for an example, the chairs for the conference room, there's going to be a table and 6 chairs, I believe, at the conference, $489 a piece. Just strikes me as what I'm envisioning as a conference chair. Seems a little high, so I'd kind of like to know.
Sure.
I mean,
yeah.
obviously, we want to get things that are going to be well-built and going to stand up over time.
Yeah.
But I would kind of like to see what we're getting.
Okay, yep, we have essentially graphic displays of what's being proposed from a pattern selection, color selection, and also style standpoint. So we can get that out. Yep.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, so we'll put it on the agenda for September 23rd and email you.
Yep.
Communicate with
Absolutely.
Rock and others.
That concludes my report, Mr.
Thank you, sir. Budget and Finance, Commissioner Sanderson.
Yes, thank you. First part of that was the briefing that we just received on the audit, and we have a clean bill of health there. Thank you to all. Second is that we are 75% of the way through the budget year, and we are 75% of the way through the budget without any anomalies or any significant hiccups, unless something recently has happened. Mr. Kratzer, no, nothing's recently happened. So we'll have another budget meeting coming up probably, well, we'll try to do it in September. Start refining the line items. I don't think we have any major projects or lettings in the future, but of course, as the commissioners, think about what's going on, broadly speaking, please let Mr. Kratzer know, and we'll put it on the agenda for discussion, and we'll move forward. But we're in the pipeline, so to speak. Regular channels standing by. That's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Public Works, Commissioner Napper.
No report at this time.
Thank you. Health and Sanitation, Commissioner Barczak.
No report.
Admin and Personnel, Commissioner Napper.
Yes, Mr. President, the admin personnel has been discussing the benefits of establishing the position of volunteer bicycle and pedestrian coordinator. Here's a long title. To assist with the active transportation planning and implementation, and has determined that the establishment of such a position would be beneficial to advancing an active transportation policy objective contained in or shown on the various township planning documents, including Sustainable Susquehanna 2030 and the Susquehanna Township official map. I move to establish the position of volunteer bicycle and pedestrian coordinator.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries.
After careful consideration of all the information obtained, and including a lengthy and careful deliberation, weighing of all the factors and referenced by the Admin Personnel Committee, I move to appoint Mr. Richard Norfolk to the position of volunteer bicycle and pedestrian coordinator.
Second.
With
Seconded by Commissioner Engel.
all those in favor?
Any comments before we vote?
That masked man out there.
Oh, there's a bunch of men. Discern.
I want to thank him for agreeing to that salary.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
This appointment would be today, and I'll ask Mr. Norfolk if he would, who is here today, if he would like to share a few words. Mr. Wonderful?
Antonio raised a flap on Cleopatra's tent and said, I didn't come here to talk.
Yeah, you might want to invoke that 3-minute statement.
Is there a motion to rescind the nomination?
For those of you that know me, it takes me 3 minutes to introduce myself, so I'll skip the introduction. So thank you very much, commissioners, and I've been a resident of the township now for a year and several months, but I've lived in the area for 15 years. I'll just want to say that I've fallen in love with sustaining Susquehanna 2030, but I see some things that we can do to make that just a whole lot better. And one of those is when a bicycle, when an area is more inviting to biking and walking, it's just a better place to live, and it's a better place to work, and a better place to play. And I can give you about 20 minutes on each one of those, but to cut that down to less than a minute, riding a bicycle is healthy, so the health benefits are very obvious. Riding a bicycle helps the economy in more ways than one. The best bicycle shop in the entire area is in our township. Bicycle riding is up on the capital area greenbelt, depending upon whose number we're looking at, almost 400% because of the pandemic. There are many, many people that don't know how to ride a bicycle, so we can certainly help with that. Environmentally, a bicycle doesn't burn any gas. For those of you that may work or go downtown, it's going to cost a whole lot more to park. You know, when I go downtown, I don't pay to park because I ride my bike downtown. The other thing I've noticed in living here and is the connectivity of bicycling and walking in the township is a little confusing sometimes because of the way the streets are laid out. So I think with some work, we can develop ways to connect neighborhoods and make neighborhoods closer by being able to walk or not necessarily drive a car because we don't want to build roads. But we also have connectivity with the city, with Lower Paxton Township. It's a little bit more difficult, but Middle Paxton Township. So these are things that I want to work on. So thank you very much for the appointment, and I won't let you down. That's my promise.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, we have so many assets in the township, not to mention, the least of which is the Greenbelt, which you had one or two things to do with. You're with the Harrisburg Bicycle Club. There's a lot of assets here, both, in terms of trails, in terms of amenities, and in terms of people power. There's a lot of people in the township, and a growing number, that are into biking and walking. We're going to be considering something tonight for a study for a new trail. We have 2 new parks that are going to be opening that are very pedestrian friendly, in fact ADA friendly, that we're going to be opening officially soon. So it really, to me, feels good that we have somebody with your expertise and your spirit and energy to help us, the pros in here, Dave, Betsy, and everybody else, George, to try to pull all this together in a way that's safe, in a way that's going to make our community an even better place to live. So I appreciate your taking this volunteer assignment and helping us out. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you. There are several splinter groups that have popped up around the township and in the adjoining townships that are some very well-meaning folks that want to improve bicycle riding for children. There's an organization called Ray's Community Place, which is on KB Street, which is.
Do you want to mention the event on Sunday? Do you want to mention the dedication on Sunday, just while you have it on? Okay.
Yeah. Ray's has started short rides for for children and people that are just starting to ride, such as Commissioner Nate. So, but an Eagle Scout suggested putting a bicycle repair station there. He had one built. You can't buy one. They're in very short supply, so they had one built, and it's installed. It's right on the green belt. It's in the township. It's directly across from Stabler Park. 2:00 Sunday afternoon. The green belt will be there. The Harrisburg Bicycle Club would be there, and I'd love to see as many of you folks as possible from the township to be there. I'll be there as well. So again, thank you very much, and
Thank you.
Happy trails. Thanks, Dick. Really appreciate it.
All right. This isn't my report, Mr. President.
Excellent report.
Excellent.
All right, Police, Commissioner Engel.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we certify the Civil Service Sergeant's promotional list.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And next, is we're all looking for thoughts and recommendations for this year's trick or treat. So I'll open it up for anybody who's thoughts or comments about what we should do.
Sure. So if I can just share the chief's recommendation, recognizing he's not able to be here right now. So his recommendation is to observe trick or treat on October the 28th, which is the Thursday, the last Thursday of the month. That's consistent with some of our other peer townships, Susquehanna Township in particular, I know he had mentioned. But that's his recommendation. The actual date of Halloween is falling on a Sunday this year, so his thought was to stay away from that, and again, try to be generally consistent with our neighbors, which again is October the 28th.
So, we need a motion on that, because over the past couple of years, we changed it a couple of times.
Yeah, I don't think it hurts. I don't know if it's necessarily required, but if the Board of Commissioners is inclined to make a motion to establish trick or treat on October the 28th, I think it's typically between the hours of 6 and 8. Is that what it is?
Right.
That would be fine, Mr. President.
But anything we can do to start driving out the messages. We want to avoid a situation like we had 3 years ago, where we ended up having 3 Halloweens because of bad weather.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it was just a mess. But lock it down, put it in concrete.
Yep.
And it is what it is. If something comes up later, we can deal with it then. But, so I would ask for a motion that the board recommend staff and police department prepare for October 28th Halloween date.
From 6 to 8 p.m., so moved.
Second.
Seconded. Any comments, questions?
I have one, just given the fact that we seem to be in the same situation as last year. I would propose that we, allow people to observe as they choose, but publish CDC recommendations and guidelines consistent with, what their current recommendation for outdoor activity.
Sure. Yep.
I think the Delta variant, unfortunately, is now with us, and so that would be my.
Yeah, well, we can make sure to include that. And, publication on the website, publication on our social media channels, those kinds of things, yes.
Quick question, Mr. President. Sure. And this is nothing new. I know in the past that we and other municipalities have studiously avoided Fridays and Saturdays. What is the wisdom in that? What is the thinking to stay away from Fridays and Saturdays? In this case, understood, with a Sunday, you wouldn't want to have it probably. But would a Saturday or a Sunday, or a Friday or a Saturday be an option, or you have any idea?
I do not. George is saying that the conflict with Friday football, so I guess traditionally they've tried to stay away from that.
Okay, that makes sense.
But Rob didn't say anything about Saturday in particular as to whether that would be a problem or not.
Okay. I didn't know if maybe I remember Mischief Night was typically in the mix too. That's when I was very young. And I know there was some thinking there, but I just wasn't sure. I was just curious.
Yeah, I think Chief has said that the past practice of the County Chiefs Association recommendation had to do with a shift or scheduling issue, and that was the basis for the recommendation to ensure that
Gotcha.
there was adequate
Well, that makes
coverage.
sense.
But with the emergence of the 12-hour shift, I don't think there's any relevance to that shift or manpower consideration any longer. So.
Thank you.
That concludes my report, Mr. President.
All right, any other comments or questions?
We going to vote on that?
Yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
That concludes my report.
October 28 it is. Fire and EMS, Commissioner Fleming.
Yes, Mr. President. So for August, I just wanted to report out that Progress Fire responded to 70 calls, and the average firefighter per call was 12. The average number of firefighters per call were 12. Rescue Fire responded to 57 calls, and the average number of firefighters per call was 6. And certainly, we want to take a moment to commend our volunteer firefighters who left their homes, jobs in some cases, to staff fire apparatus and boats during the remnants of Ida. Rescue Fire Company boat crews responded and rescued people in Cumberland and York counties. And Progress Fire rescued 3 people from a car that had taken on water on Progress Avenue. All the while, we were able to maintain adequate number of crews to suppress fires and protect the rest of the township. So thank them for their service and, through the weather event. And I guess the last thing I'll say, I was going to reserve for commissioner comments, but it seems appropriate now. I just want to mention and acknowledge on Saturday will be the 20th anniversary of the September 11th terror attacks, and recognize the role of firefighters and law enforcement personnel in response, and pay tribute. Typically, there is an event that takes place among firefighters where they climb 110 stories worth of stairs on that day, in tribute to the 343 firefighters that were lost that day in the World Trade Center towers, and the thousands more who perished that day. So I just wanted to take a moment and acknowledge that. I'm sure all of us, it was one of those life-altering events where we all remember where we are, what we were doing when we heard about it. And so just be mindful of that and, continue to have that spirit of cooperation that we witnessed shortly in the aftermath. So that concludes my report.
Great, thank you. Recreation Commissioner Robarczyk.
No report.
Great. Are we still on for the ribbon cutting on September 21st?
Yeah, so September the 21st, 11 a.m., the Boyd Park ribbon cutting ceremony is scheduled, yes, Mr. President.
Bless you. Bless you. Would you mind getting a reminder out or maybe putting it on, sending out a calendar invite?
Yep, will do, yep.
And is Mr. Mahoney going to be available? And
Both Susan and Mr. Mahoney are going to be in
They
attendance.
both
yes.
responded in the affirmative.
wow, what about the general?
The general did also.
Wow. Going to be star-studded. And who's the other one? The solicitor?
Barrister?
The barrister.
Yeah, the barrister.
I think he hasn't responded yet, but I would think that he
Barrister.
would definitely would be there.
Barrister is Chuck Swally, the lawyer, but he used to be a member of this board years ago, yeah. And they're the members of the foundation that made available the $200,000 we've already utilized, and we're hoping we'll approve the $200,000 that we've already asked for the next round from the Boyd Foundation as a grant. So that's good. Thanks, Dave.
Oh, you're welcome.
Planning and zoning, Commissioner Rothrock.
Thank you, Mr. President. There was a planning commission meeting 23rd of August. One interesting facet of that meeting was there was not a quorum present, but Mr. Bowser was on the line. After some discussion, it was determined, I believe by our solicitor, that for that body, online votes could be counted, unlike our body, because they're a recommending body and not legislative action. I thought that was an interesting aspect of it. There were 3 items that were discussed. Tommy Express Car Wash is preliminary and final land development plan for construction of a large car wash on the property that's currently Joe Kay's Brew House on Union Deposit. There was some discussion on that, and it was tabled until the next meeting. One of the considerations was stacking up of cars coming off of Union Deposit. They were concerned about actually backing onto Union Deposit car wash, so that's something they're going to address. Enclave at Elmerton, which is the development on Elmerton Avenue of 156 townhouses. 5 waivers were requested, including sidewalks along Elmerton. All the waivers were recommended for approval. The sidewalk issue was subject to them developing a trail along Elmerton to Veterans Park from the development, and also connection to the green belt, plus giving a right-of-way to the township along Elmerton the other direction across the property for future connectivity. So that was how they addressed, or the Planning Commission addressed the issue of sidewalks there. The waivers were recommended and the plan was recommended for approval, subject to the conditions, one of which is that the Design Review Committee would have to review plans before any building permits were issued, because that review is complete. And the deadline for action is the 26th of this month, so I presume we're going to be looking at that at our workshop. And the third item was Susquehanna Union Green Phases 3A and 3B, which is final land development plan for the purpose of constructing 100 multifamily dwelling units in a spot that was originally designated for commercial. We had our public hearing regarding this issue just today. Approval of that final land development plan was recommended by the Planning Commission, and the deadline for that action is the 24th of October. That concludes the zoning hearing board meeting for the this month. I have my notes wrong. I think it was the 4th of September was canceled. That concludes my report.
Thank you. The Joe K's Brew House and Car Wash, are they going to tear that down, or?
Yeah, that's what the plan calls for. Yes.
I wonder if there's some way to segue that project, Canada Canyon issue. Because it's right, it boards
it
right
joins
there.
it,
Yeah,
It's an adjacent parcel.
absolutely. Maybe you can include that in your study, assuming it's approved tonight.
We'd be happy to do that. The only issue there, that the topography behind
Yeah.
Joe K's is pretty rugged. It drops off steeply into the creek bed and then goes up towards the remainder of the RK property.
Yeah, and I don't know how far Joe K goes back, perpendicular from Union Deposit Road, but I do remember when I walked through last year, there was a switchback that Dr. Kaneda had used, and he was envisioning some sort of a rehab, portion of his rehab treatment program. So I don't know. Just throwing it out there, but it just.
That certainly can be included, absolutely.
The plan that they presented, the section that is closest to the canyon was going to be paved and used for vacuuming. After it was washed, vacuum it out. So that, right? So I'm not sure, how compatible that is with the park. I don't know, but that was what the plan showed.
Considering the terrain, as Bob says, it might be more appropriate to work perhaps with Dr. Kaneda or whoever now controls the Central Penn Fitness complex building there. There might be more opportunities rather than Joe K. Brewery, because the Joe K. Brewery or the new car wash location, as you say, is a very steep drop.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
What's the thought? All right,
Okay, that concludes my report.
thank you, Commish. All right, on to bids and agreements. Consider authorizing the sale of a 2018 Ford Explorer Police Interceptor for $15,100.
Move to sell. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Consider authorizing the sale of the 2003 Ford F-350 Super Duty XL with service truck body, 59,000 plus miles, via municipal bid.
Second.
Moved and seconded to advertise. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Ratify and confirm the township manager's execution of a natural gas supply contract through Snyder Brothers, Inc., which is our current Township supplier for a term from December 2021 through November 2024 at a price of $5.07 decatherm.
Yeah, so just some background on this. Again, as the President has indicated, I did execute the contract. As we've talked about in the past, the commodities are priced daily, so it's not something that necessarily aligns with our municipal meeting schedule. I did ask them if they would be willing to hold the price through this, but again, there's volatility in the market and there's daily fluctuation in the market. So I proceeded with executing the contract. The pricing came through Chrislin Energy, which previously had brokered our natural gas for us. There were, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like there were 4 respondents to the bid, so they had issued a request for proposals from their network. There were 4 respondents, and Snyder Brothers, who, as the President mentioned, is our current supplier, had the most competitive price. And Chrislin's recommendation, given the volatility in this market in particular and some of the movements they've been seeing, recommended to go to the extended term to, again, create kind of budgetary certainty for us moving forward and predictability to eliminate some of that risk associated with the volatility of the market and just certain things that are expected based on, different kind of public policy initiatives that are being battered around and so forth. So I did execute that contract. Again, it's for a 3-year term, December 2021 through November 2024. So,
And that price will be consistent throughout the 3-year?
it's a fixed price. There's no minimum requirement of purchase, so it's 100% swing in terms of what we only pay for what we use. It's completely fixed throughout the term.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next up, we just discussed scope of work for the Union Deposit Road site, potential recreation area. And HRG has put together a proposal at our request. Give us some ideas of what we can do with it, the ability of pursuing a purchase with Dr. Kaneda. I don't know if you want to address, talk about it in any way, Bob, but.
I'd be happy to, Mr. President and Commissioners. Before you have a scope of work and a proposal for us to prepare a concept plan for the potential development of the RK land tract. We've been discussing this with the owner, Dr. Kaneda, and his property entity, RK Land, for well over a year now. And gotten to the point where after a number of site visitations and discussions with the Recreation Advisory Committee and Doug Nous, the Parks and Rec Director, the scope of services is basically to see what can be done with the property. The property itself is very unique in terms of its features. It can best be described as a urban park because it obviously is within an urbanized area along a major arterial corridor within the township. It does have a stream going through it. It does have some topographical constraints. There is an existing house on one of the adjoining properties that is also owned by RK Land. There are also potentials for connectivity, parking, and pedestrian access between the ecumenical community and the Ugrow Harrisburg Daycare Center, which is off of Wilhelm Road. So attached is the actual scope of services, and I'll just run down through what some of the things that we would be looking at. Certainly footpaths would be one of them. Mountain bike connector paths for Samba, which is not the dance, that's the Susquehanna area Mountain Bike Association, educational center, outdoor classroom, art and interpretive garden elements, potential woodland disc golf facility, and other amenities that may be coordinated with both ecumenical community, the Circle School, and of course with the township. And we would engage those stakeholders as part of the process, including design review meetings, coming up with some cost estimating services, cost estimates that would be identified conceptually. And attached to your packet is a very schematic idea of what could be done with the track, certainly not limited to, but I would expect that once we get through the concept planning that there may be a host of other ideas and suggestions that may be incorporated into the proposal. So I think it's a very worthwhile project, and certainly in an area that is not only accessible to a lot of people, but is coordinated with the newly installed sidewalk along the south side of Union Deposit Road, which was just completed last year.
So the other hope or other use of this, beyond the planning exercise, the work product would position us to be in a position to go after funding through DCNR. And DCNR does have money for acquisition, and having a concept sketch to articulate a vision as part of an application process obviously is always a helpful element. Particularly one that's, engaging some of the neighboring major property owners and so forth. So, as was mentioned, the Recreation Advisory Committee has reviewed the scope of services, has discussed the potential of the project, and is recommending to this body to approve the scope of services.
I'd like to make a motion
Second.
to approve this.
Been moved and seconded to engage HRG to conduct this study at a $5,000 cost. Anybody have any questions of Mr. Grubik before we move on?
I was just going to maybe add into what Bob and Dave have already said, if I could. There's a couple maps in here that you can find, and I think this document is like the 8th staple in our stack tonight. So if you're digging for it, there is the map of the arcade land. There's also a map of actually an aerial photograph with some illustrations of just thoughts or proposals or ideas what might be able to be accomplished with this land. And just as by explanation, the levelest portion of this area, I guess it's almost 20 acres, is that which is closest to Union Deposit Road. We've kind of labeled it urban park, as just a thought that this might be an area where there could be something more of a traditional park with shrubbery, benches, maybe even a pond or fountains or something of that kind, And that really the way that we would encourage access to this property might be through an ADA path or boardwalk coming off from the Canby Street area, Shield Street area. The great thing about this lot, as Bob says, it's almost 20 acres of woodland within a mile of the city and surrounded totally by development, both commercial and residential. So I think it is kind of a jewel. It's a wonderful opportunity, and especially if we're able to get DCA funding or any state funding that would help in the purchase of this. But a lot of possibilities. As was said, Slutsnik Run, the creek runs through it. And it just has a lot of possibilities. And there's parking marked along the street there. That would be obviously contingent upon a kind of a land swap perhaps, or an agreement with the Ecumenical Center and the Leader family. But they have already been kind of a party to some of the discussions about this land and the potential use of this land as a park. And they were very supportive, not necessarily in any specific land swap, but in just the concept. And so there's some enthusiasm, even there, because especially if this is something that could turn out to be useful for senior citizens, it could be a nice walking area. Some parts are more hilly and more appropriate for folks who might be younger, but just a lot of possibility there. Some beautiful. I've been in the creek up to my almost to my knees at one point, I think, and it's very clean. There's wildlife in there. I'm surprised there's freshwater shellfish of some sort, you know. So there's actual.
Turkeys.
What's that?
Turkeys? We saw
Yeah,
turkeys.
we did see turkeys. Yeah.
Deer.
Deer.
There's a deer herd that uses it as a highway.
Okay. There was a beaver's nest in there we ran into, you know, so some real wildlife. And I think it would be a wonderful piece of land to preserve.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Gruitt. Okay, action on ordinances, resolutions, et cetera. Betsy, you want to come up, please? The first one will be to consider ordinance 2107, which is, was the purpose of the hearing that we had just before this meeting.
Correct, yeah, this is an ordinance amending 27-1903 and 27-1906, 3 of the zoning ordinance. It would amend the residential uses that are permitted in the TND1 district, amend the percentages that apply to the land area for the TND1 district, changing the multifamily to, or the residential to 50%, and amend the regulating plan for the TND1.
Motion to adopt the ordinance.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any comments or questions?
What are the changes in permitted residential uses, Betsy? Is that correct?
So it's just, I think, the wording regarding multifamily. And I don't know if you want to add anything to the specific changes, Dave or Kat?
Oh, in terms of the, yeah, in terms of the changes.
Do you want-
Go ahead.
There was specific wording in multifamily that limited the number of units per building in your existing multifamily ordinance. So in
It's
this.
units per building.
Right, so in this instance, we just, basically allowed it to recognize the zone, or the regulating plan that's included in your ordinance to allow as many units as indicated on there. I think it was 18, and our buildings have more than 18 in it.
24.
Yeah.
So, and
Okay, the limit was 18 and this is 24.
Right, and instead of just locking it into we say 24, and next time something happens, it ends up being, 30 or something, we just had it noted on the regulating plan so you guys can approve it in that manner, as opposed to going back and looking at that singular number. It kind of lets the design of the building and the site lead, as opposed to a specific number noted.
And I think that was part of just the review process that even the Planning Commission perhaps considered, was recognizing there are standards that are being imposed in terms of architectural and form standards on these buildings. And obviously part of the issue of the 18, I think originally, and I wasn't here at that point, but a monolithic kind of building with a number of multifamily units in it may have not been something that the township was interested in at that point. Obviously, they're going through a DRC process with very strict architectural standards and form standards to minimize, the impact of a monolithic kind of structure on the landscape. So.
And I would just add that instead of changing, because that multifamily regulation is part of the entire ordinance, instead of changing that section, we had it focused just on the TND, because we want to keep the 18 units per.
Right.
Since not all the other areas have design regulations.
I guess leaving it open-ended like that makes me a little nervous.
It's not open-ended, it's on the regulating plan specifically.
Right. What is the process for amendment of the regulating plan? In other words, what if you decided, well, we want to do a building with 60 units?
It's
What
the
what
same
control would
process.
we have to say, no, we don't think that's appropriate?
It would go through this exact same process. So it would go to DRC, Planning Commission, and then back to you for a text
Okay,
amendment.
so
Because the
a major-
regulating
The regula-
plan is part of the text.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Any other comments or questions? We have a motion on the floor in a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Carries.
Thanks.
Thanks, Betsy.
Thank you, Kat.
Next up is ordinance 2108. I don't know if you want to address this, Chief, but this has to do with the speed limit street painting near Logan Alley and Fulton Alley.
Just subsequent to a traffic study that was passed
Right.
a couple meetings ago.
Yeah, this is the ordinance.
Okay. You want to describe it a little bit, or?
Sure. We,
For the camera. For all your friends on YouTube.
so the traffic study was for the potential of a four-way stop at Fourth and Montrose, as well as speed calming on Montrose Street. And we're recommending a four-way stop at Fourth and Montrose, as well as some speed limit, street painting, and painting the curbing so that there's sufficient sight distance at that intersection.
Okay.
That's it?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed?
For the section. Oh, sorry about that.
Motion carries.
So,
Yeah, the next one
The next
is
one?
Resolution 2109.
yes, and I understand that was considered at the last meeting. I did go down there and check the eastern portion of that, what would be the handicap spot on Parkway Road, and my recommendation is we draw that back from 20 feet to 17 feet from the access way to what would be the property line of the next property east of the church there.
Okay.
So that's my recommendation, just a small amendment.
Okay, so I assume we'll need to redraw the amendment, Dave, or the resolution?
Well, the resolution just references the traffic study or the evaluation that was done that's attached to the resolution. So to the extent that you, I guess, modify the traffic study to reflect 17 feet, I think you're
Yeah.
you're good.
I
If
think
you
that's just
wanna-
a modification
if you
for
wanna-
the highway department.
And if you want to, obviously, condition your approval on the reduction of that to 17, from 20 feet to 17 feet, that would be appropriate.
Move to accept the chief's modification from 20 to 17 feet.
Moved and seconded. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, unfinished business. Is there any?
There is not, Mr. President.
Okay. Reports, manager.
Just one housekeeping item, the audit that was presented, if we could have a motion to accept the audit as presented by the auditors.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
I have nothing further, Mr. President.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you. Engineer, we have your report, Bob. Do you have anything else?
It
you'd
is
like to add?
nothing outside of my report, Mr. President. Thank you.
Solicitor, Tara?
Nothing outside of our report, Mr. President.
Thank you. School Board, Commissioner Fleming?
No report at this time, Mr. President.
Thank you. Authority?
No report, thank you.
Thank you. Shade Tree? Commissioner Pine?
No report.
Thank you. Anything on the communications front?
Mr. President, just to say that the newsletter will be in the mail on October 8th, so residents will be receiving it in the days after that.
Thank you. That was a nice little piece that went out 2 weeks ago, with the programs that are running through
Oh, yeah.
late summer and fall. That was nicely done.
Give Doug credit for that.
Yep. Human Relations, Parks and Rec, anything? All right, old business.
Just, if I could just one note, just for the board's information on Parks and Rec. So Amy Putnam, who was the Ninth Ward representative on the RAC, the Recreation Advisory Committee, has tenured her resignation due to another conflict that she has. So Commissioner Napper is aware of that and is, I guess, looking for a replacement at this point for your future consideration.
Thank you, sir.
Old business, any new business? Commissioner comments? Wow. Can we pay some bills?
President?
Yes.
I move to accept the report of bills paid
How much?
as of September 9th, that's today. $1,489,945.74.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Comments or questions? All in favor? Aye. We are out of here.